So our first speaker is Robby Slaughter. Robby is a workflow and productivity expert. His focus is helping organizations and individuals to become more efficient, more effective, and more satisfied at work. Robby's latest book comes out next month, The New Science of Time Management. If you want to come to the launch party, please find him and get the details from him about that party. So he's been involved with Spark since the very beginning. Please help me welcome Robby Slaughter to the Spark stage.
It's February of 1933. It's a cold night and the government is in shambles. All of the factions are warring, everyone's at each other's throats, and although there's a new leader elected just 4 weeks ago, he doesn't really have the support of everyone because his party is just the largest minority party. And late that night, a couple of individuals sneak into the Parliament building and they light a fire, which spreads across the structure, destroying it entirely. Now, this fire is used by the leader to blame his opposition party and to get support to pass the Reichstag decrees and to be able to give Adolf Hitler the power of Chancellor for life and start the Nazi Party. This is a real conspiracy. It really happened, and it didn't involve thousands of people or complex plans, just a couple of individuals who had an evil idea to change the course of history. But not every conspiracy is dark and nefarious. If you go to the UK today and you want to buy a television, you're required, by law, to have a TV license. The BBC explains that if you don't have a license, there are vans that drive all over the country with special detecting machines that figure out which addresses have televisions but no associated licenses. And yet, no one has ever seen an advertisement for one of the jobs you would work at to drive these vans. No engineer's ever been able to explain how you'd build a machine that would detect people using TVs without a license. In fact, it seems the BBC just made this up decades ago to scare people into buying TV licenses. It was a conspiracy invented to get people to follow the law. Now, sometimes following the law is what we want people to do, and we're willing to do anything to make it possible. In 1920, our government put into effect prohibition, a law requiring that no adult be allowed to drink alcohol under almost any circumstances. And yet, of course, millions of people kept drinking. They had private stores, they had secret stills, and many often they would steal industrial alcohol and use that to consume. Now, the government was desperate to stop this behavior, so much so they did something truly horrible. They began to poison industrialized alcohol. And over the course of Prohibition, over 10,000 Americans were killed by this process, a secret which the government refused to admit for decades after Prohibition was over. But it's not always the past that creates conspiracy. Sometimes it's fear of the future. In 1953, our government was extremely concerned about the possibility of thermonuclear war. After all, the last international conflict had been ended by 2 atomic bombs, and many states had joined the nuclear club or had announced programs. And in order to address this concern, what our government did, and this is unbelievable to realize, is they had teams of people going across the country digging up graves to get the remains of recently deceased individuals to attempt to reanimate those parts using heart-lung machines and other contraptions to test the long-term impact of radiation on human flesh. It's a true story. It's called Project Sunshine. Look it up. Now, most of the conspiracies you'll hear about are ridiculous, and we know they're not true, but sometimes, once in a while, people with an evil idea get together and decide to do something. And it's our responsibility to always ask questions, knowing that most of the time things won't hold up, most of the time the claims are silly. But once in a while, people do conspire to commit acts against us, which means we should always be vigilant, always be aware, always be awake to the possibility, and ready to figure out what's going to happen next. Watch out, because there are rarely real conspiracies.
Don't delay. Get your ticket for the next Sparks event today.